May 1941. The Atlantic was calm, but danger was moving beneath the waves. A single German battleship had entered the ocean, and within days, its name would terrify the British Navy. That ship was Bismarck. Welcome to Mr. Torque Official, where we explore powerful ships through deep research, real history, and clear storytelling, from their creation to their final fate. Bismarck was a German battleship of the Bismarck class, built for the Kriegsmarine on the eve of World War II. Named after Otto von Bismarck, the architect of modern Germany, the ship was designed to symbolize national power, technological superiority, and naval ambition. When she entered service in 1940, Bismarck instantly became one of the most powerful warships afloat, rivaling any battleship operated by Britain, the United States, or Japan. She was not just large and heavily armed. She was engineered for survivability, long-range operations, and high-speed Atlantic warfare. Unlike older battleships built mainly for fleet engagements, Bismarck was intended to operate aggressively against enemy supply lines, threatening Britain's lifeline across the ocean. Her appearance alone forced the Royal Navy to rethink its Atlantic strategy. To British planners, Bismarck was not merely a ship, it was a strategic crisis. From the moment she sailed, every major naval power understood that this battleship had the potential to reshape the balance of naval power in the North Atlantic. At the start of World War II, control of the seas was just as important as control of land or air. Britain depended heavily on maritime trade for food, fuel, and raw materials, making the Atlantic Ocean its lifeline. German leadership understood that defeating Britain did not require invasion alone. It required cutting these supply routes. However, Germany entered the war at a naval disadvantage. The Royal Navy was the largest and most experienced fleet in the world, with bases spread across the globe. To counter this imbalance, Germany adopted an asymmetric naval strategy focused on commerce raiding, using U-boats, surface raiders, and eventually heavy battleships to disrupt British shipping. The Atlantic became a vast hunting ground where visibility was limited, weather was harsh, and detection was difficult. In this environment, even a single powerful battleship could force Britain to divert enormous resources. Every German surface ship sortie created panic, stretched British defenses, and threatened the survival of the British war economy. It was within this tense and dangerous naval landscape that Bismarck was prepared for her mission, designed not to win fleet battles, but to destabilize Britain's control of the oceans. Germany built the Bismarck as a direct response to British naval dominance and the strategic realities of World War II. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles had severely limited German naval power, leaving a deep sense of vulnerability and unfinished ambition within German leadership. When Adolf Hitler came to power, rebuilding national prestige became a priority, and the Navy was seen as a symbol of technological strength and global relevance. The Bismarck was conceived not simply as a battleship, but as a psychological and strategic weapon. Its role was to threaten Britain's sea lanes, force the Royal Navy to spread its fleet thin across the Atlantic, and create constant uncertainty. Germany understood it could not outnumber Britain at sea, so it chose to outclass individual enemy units instead. A ship like Bismarck could overpower older British battleships, survive heavy damage, and escape into the vast Atlantic. Even the possibility of its presence was enough to disrupt British planning. In this way, Bismarck represented Germany's belief that quality, power, and fear could compensate for numerical weakness at sea. The design of Bismarck reflected Germany's unique approach to battleship warfare, shaped by lessons learned from World War I and expectations of Atlantic combat. German naval architects prioritized survivability and structural strength over extreme speed or oversized guns. Bismarck was built with a strong internal framework, extensive compartmentalization, and a heavy armor scheme intended to keep the ship fighting even after taking serious damage. Unlike some foreign designs that focused on long-range firepower, Bismarck emphasized balance, armor, firepower, and mobility working together. The ship's designers assumed that Bismarck would often operate far from friendly ports, making durability essential. Advanced fire control systems and rangefinders were developed to allow accurate gunnery in poor weather, a common condition in the North Atlantic. Every aspect of her development was influenced by the idea that this battleship might face multiple enemies alone. As a result, Bismarck was not designed to win quick duels, but to endure punishment, inflict heavy damage, and escape to fight again, an engineering philosophy that would soon be tested under real combat conditions. Bismarck was constructed at the Blohm and Voss shipyard in Hamburg, one of Germany's most advanced naval yards. Her keel was laid in July 1936, at a time when Germany was openly defying international naval limitations. The construction process was massive and complex, involving thousands of workers, specialized steel, and years of planning. As the ship slowly took shape, it became a powerful symbol of Germany's re-emerging naval ambitions. Bismarck was launched in February 1939 in a highly publicized ceremony attended by senior Nazi officials, reflecting both political propaganda and national pride. However, launching the ship did not mean she was ready for war. Months of fitting out followed, during which weapons systems, engines, and electronic equipment were installed and tested. The scale of the project highlighted Germany's industrial capabilities, but also placed immense pressure on resources already strained by war preparations. From the very beginning, Bismarck was more than a warship. She was a statement to the world that Germany intended to challenge British naval supremacy head-on. The construction of Bismarck represented one of the most expensive and resource-intensive naval projects undertaken by Nazi Germany. Building a battleship of this scale required vast quantities of high-grade steel, complex machinery, precision weapons, and a skilled workforce working over several years. Although exact wartime figures were closely guarded, the cost of Bismarck ran into hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks, equivalent to billions in modern value. This investment went far beyond money alone. Thousands of engineers, technicians, and shipyard workers were tied to the project, along with factories producing armor plates, gun barrels, engines, and fire control systems. At a time when Germany was preparing for a total war economy, dedicating so many resources to a single ship was a calculated risk. German leadership believed that one powerful battleship could have a strategic impact far greater than its cost by forcing Britain to divert fleets, fuel, and manpower across the Atlantic. Bismarck thus became not just a naval asset, but a concentrated expression of Germany's industrial power, ambition, and willingness to gamble heavily on a single weapon system. Bismarck was among the largest and most advanced battleships of her time, designed to combine size, power, and endurance for long-range Atlantic operations. She measured over 250 meters in length, with a broad beam that provided both stability and internal space for armor and machinery. Her full-load displacement exceeded 50,000 tons, placing her in the same league as the world's most formidable capital ships. Bismarck was powered by a complex propulsion system of high-pressure boilers and steam turbines, driving multiple propellers and allowing a top speed of over 30 knots, an impressive figure for a heavily armored battleship. This speed gave her the ability to outrun many older enemy battleships while choosing when to engage or disengage. Her operational range allowed extended missions without immediate resupply, a critical requirement for commerce raiding in the Atlantic. Supporting this immense machine was a crew of more than 2,000 officers and sailors, each responsible for keeping the ship combat-ready in some of the harshest sea conditions on Earth. Bismarck's reputation as an almost indestructible battleship was largely built on her advanced armor and protection system. German designers placed extreme emphasis on defensive strength, believing that survival in prolonged combat was more important than delivering the first strike. The ship was protected by a thick armored belt along her sides, designed to absorb and deflect enemy shells fired at medium ranges. This belt was carefully angled and backed by internal layers to increase its effectiveness. The armored deck was built to protect vital areas such as ammunition magazines and engine rooms from plunging shells and aerial bombs. Bismarck's main gun turrets were shielded by heavy armor, allowing them to continue firing even under intense enemy attack. Inside the hull, Extensive compartmentalization and watertight bulkheads were used to limit flooding if the ship was damaged. This layered defense system made Bismarck extremely difficult to disable quickly. Even when hit, she was expected to remain operational, continue fighting, and maintain mobility, an expectation that would later be both proven and tragically tested during her final mission. Bismarck's offensive power was designed to match her defensive strength, making her one of the most dangerous surface combatants of World War II. Her main armament consisted of 8 380mm guns mounted in 4 massive turrets, capable of firing heavy armor-piercing shells over long distances with devastating accuracy. These guns were intended to penetrate the armor of enemy battleships and deliver crippling damage in a few well-placed salvos. Supporting the main battery was a strong secondary armament designed to engage cruisers and destroyers that might attempt torpedo attacks. In addition, Bismarck was equipped with an array of anti-aircraft weapons to defend against aerial threats, reflecting the growing importance of air power at sea. Advanced fire control systems, rangefinders, and optical equipment allowed her gunners to engage targets effectively even in poor visibility. Together, these weapons turned Bismarck into a floating fortress capable of dominating surface engagements and posing a serious threat to any enemy ship that crossed her path. Operation Rheinübung was the first and only major combat mission assigned to Bismarck, and it was planned as a bold strike against British control of the Atlantic. The objective was not to seek a decisive fleet battle, but to break into the open ocean and attack Allied merchant shipping that sustained Britain's war effort. Bismarck was ordered to sail alongside the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, combining battleship firepower with cruiser reconnaissance. German Naval Command believed this pairing would maximize damage while increasing survivability. Timing was critical, as success depended on avoiding early detection by British patrols and reconnaissance aircraft. The mission placed enormous pressure on Bismarck's captain and crew, who understood that once discovered, the Royal Navy would respond with overwhelming force. Despite these risks, German leadership viewed the operation as worth the gamble. If successful, Rheinübung could disrupt Britain's supply lines and demonstrate that German surface ships could still challenge the world's strongest navy. As Bismarck slipped into northern waters, the operation marked the beginning of a dramatic confrontation that would soon capture global attention. As Bismarck and Prinz Eugen moved northward toward the open Atlantic, their journey became a race between secrecy and detection. The ships navigated through narrow passages and harsh northern waters, where fog, ice, and unpredictable weather both aided concealment and increased risk. German commanders hoped these conditions would shield them from British reconnaissance, but the Royal Navy maintained constant surveillance over likely escape routes. Neutral observers, patrol aircraft, and naval intelligence networks all played a role in tracking suspicious movements. Even brief sightings were enough to alert British command that a major German surface operation was underway. Once the alarm was raised, British naval forces began repositioning across the North Atlantic, anticipating a breakout attempt. For Bismarck's crew, the tension grew with every hour at sea. They understood that surprise was their greatest advantage and that once fully detected, escape would become far more difficult. The journey into the Atlantic was no longer just a transit. It was the opening phase of a high-stakes hunt that would soon erupt into open combat. The Battle of the Denmark Strait marked the moment when Bismarck's mission turned into one of the most dramatic naval confrontations of World War II. In the early hours of May 24, 1941, Bismarck and Prinz Eugen encountered the British battlecruiser HMS Hood and the newly commissioned HMS Prince of Wales in the cold waters between Greenland and Iceland. Both sides moved quickly to favorable firing positions as visibility remained poor and the sea rough. The British aimed to close the distance rapidly, hoping to neutralize Bismarck's heavy guns before they could be fully effective. German commanders, however, maintained disciplined fire control, carefully selecting targets. As the range closed, massive shells thundered across the sea, signaling the start of a battle that would last only minutes but leave a lasting mark on naval history. This clash was not just ship against ship. It was a test of design philosophies, training, and nerve under extreme pressure, with the fate of two great navies hanging in the balance. Within minutes of the engagement in the Denmark Strait, the battle reached a catastrophic turning point. As Bismarck's gunners refined their aim, one of her heavy shells struck HMS Hood with devastating precision. The shell penetrated deep into the ship, triggering a massive explosion that ignited Hood's ammunition magazines. In a blinding flash and a towering column of smoke and fire, the pride of the Royal Navy was torn apart. The explosion was so violent that Hood broke in two and sank in less than 3 minutes. Out of more than 1,400 crew members, only 3 survived. The shock of the loss echoed across Britain, sending waves of anger, grief, and disbelief through both the public and naval command. Hood had been a symbol of British naval power for over 2 decades, and her sudden destruction was a psychological blow of enormous magnitude. In that moment, Bismarck transformed from a dangerous enemy ship into a national obsession. The battle proved the lethal effectiveness of German gunnery and sealed Bismarck's fate by ensuring that the Royal Navy would stop at nothing to destroy her. The destruction of HMS Hood sent shockwaves through the British Admiralty and transformed the entire naval situation in the Atlantic. What had begun as a German breakout mission instantly became a crisis of national importance for Britain. Prime Minister Winston Churchill personally demanded action, issuing the now famous order to sink the Bismarck. Every available British warship in the region was redirected toward the hunt, regardless of fuel levels, damage, or original assignments. Although Bismarck had achieved a decisive victory, she had not escaped unscathed. During the battle, she suffered damage to her fuel tanks, causing a serious oil leak that reduced her operational range and left a visible trail on the ocean's surface. This single weakness would soon prove critical. German command ordered Bismarck to break off and head toward occupied France for repairs, while Prince Eugen was sent ahead to continue commerce raiding alone. The brief triumph had turned into a desperate race for survival. From this moment onward, Bismarck was no longer the hunter, but the hunted, pursued relentlessly across the Atlantic by the full power of the Royal Navy. As Bismarck turned south toward the safety of occupied France, the balance of power shifted dramatically. The oil leaking from her damaged tanks marked her path across the Atlantic like a trail of blood, making concealment almost impossible. British ships closed in from multiple directions, aircraft carriers prepared their squadrons, and radio traffic filled the air with urgency. For the crew aboard Bismarck, the reality was grim. They were alone, damaged, and being hunted by the world's largest navy. Every hour increased the danger, and every decision could mean survival or destruction. What had started as a mission of confidence and strength was now a desperate struggle against time, distance, and overwhelming force. The Atlantic, once seen as an escape route, had become a trap. The hunt for Bismarck had begun, and there would be no escape. Part 2 will reveal how this pursuit ended and whether the most feared battleship of World War II could survive the fury unleashed against her.